Imbolc is one of the quieter Sabbats. It is the midpoint between winter and winter solstice and the spring equinox. And although it is quieter, it's still very powerful and an incredibly powerful time when we can dive beneath the surface and maybe explore at what is stirring underneath, even the things that we might not be able to see visibly in the outside world. So tonight we're going to be exploring Imbolc, where it comes from, what its historical and its spiritual significance is, as well as grounded in meaningful ways that you can celebrate Imbolc, especially if it still feels like we are very much in winter. So merry meet, I'm Aislin, this is Ask Aislin, and tonight I'm here with a witch's guide to Imbolc. So welcome to those who are joining us live. Say hi in the chat, let us know you are here. As always, there will be a Q&A at the end, and you can ask any questions or leave any comments. I'll be watching the feed as we go. Make sure also to leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the feed, and that will help us get this out to more people. So we are going to dive in now, and we are going to start by talking about what is Imbolc, where does it come from, give you a little bit of the lore behind the season, and then from there we will talk about some different ways that you can celebrate. So some of these ways will be magical ways where we might be doing spell work or rituals, and some of these ways might also be mundane ways that you may not have thought are ways that we can tap into the Imbolc energy. So we are going to dive right in. So again, let me know if the microphone is working. What is Imbolc? So Imbolc is one of the 8 Sabbats of the Wheel of the Year. This is considered a cross-quarter Sabbat. So what that means is that it is a midpoint. So it is a midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And because of that, the timing of Imbolc is related to the timing of those other 2 Sabbats as well, or those other 2 points in the wheel. So now traditionally, many witches will celebrate Imbolc on either February 1st or February 2nd. Sometimes actually at dusk on January 31st into dusk of February 1st. Astrologically, though, because it's a cross-quarter day, it does shift and it does move every year. So it's in some years, Imbolc is as late as February 7th or 8th. In this particular year, Imbolc is actually, astrological Imbolc is on the 3rd to the 4th of February, depending on what time zone you are in, and that would mark the exact midpoint between Yule and Ostara. So the other thing that's important to note, and I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end, is that Imbolc is energetically is a season and it is not just a singular day. So what that means is you don't have to worry if you don't have the ability to celebrate on February 1st or on February 2nd. You have this window that opens up to the seasonal energy. And so there's a lot of practices I'm going to talk about tonight, and you don't have to feel like you need to cram them all into one day. So spread them out over the season. And in fact, I'll talk a little bit more at the end about how compounding this energy is actually really what Imbolc is about. So core themes of Imbolc. First of all, there is the returning of the light. So we start to see that first inkling of light at Yule, but oftentimes it's very much difficult to see. As we move further through the Wheel of the Year and we come to Imbolc, this is really the first kind of stirrings of life underneath the surface of the earth. There's this imagery that gets kind of passed around at Imbolc on social media, and I love this image very much, and it's the image of a woman, presumably the goddess, and she's kind of underground, but she's beginning to wake up. And that's very much what Imbolc energy is about. It's like at Yule, we welcome in that flame. You know, we acknowledge that the wheel has begun to grow, that we are in the waxing half of the year at Yule. By Imbolc, some areas may start to notice the shifting of the energy. So for example, just in the last week or so, I started to notice that the sun is setting just a little bit later every day. So you start to kind of notice that. Some areas, though, I know, especially here in the United States, in the South and the East Coast, are experiencing great winter storms. So it can be hard to understand what Imbolc is, or what that energy is, right? When we're so much in the midst of this darkness and this very, very heavy and destructive winter in some places. But nevertheless, that is what the holiday is about. It's about that returning light. It's about remembering that that light is returning, even if you can't see it right now. It is a metaphor for many things in your life, right? And so this is also a time of renewal and purification. And so we'll talk a little bit more about some practices that you can do regarding that theme later. Early beginnings. So again, those first kind of stirrings of the things underneath the surface, even if we can't quite see them yet. And it's also, I think, important to remember that Imbolc is a holiday of hope. And it's a holiday of hope without urgency. So it's not like we're forcing it right now. It's just that quiet voice within that says the light is returning. And hopefully we will see that in all areas of our life, including what's going on in the world right now, right? So Imbolc, of course, it is not springtime yet. There's another 6 weeks until we actually get to the first day of spring. So Imbolc is about tending, not about blooming. So I think very much like we talk about seed planting at both Imbolc and at Ostara, and I think there's a different kind of seed planting that we do at one or the other. So I feel like at Imbolc, the seeds that we are planting, a lot of them are internal. So these might be the ideas and the plans and the goals and the hopes and the wishes that we have, but we may still be kind of in that stagnant winter energy. Maybe we have less motivation. It's kind of hard to have a lot of energy right now, perhaps, especially if you are in one of those areas where it is the storms are raging and you're stuck inside and there's lots and lots of snow outside. Maybe you haven't shoveled yet, but that this is the time of kind of tending to those seeds, right? And then at Ostara, that's where we're actually starting to see the blooming and the physical signs of spring. We begin to see. But I'm going to go to the chat in just a moment, say hi to everybody. But here's a question for you to kind of contemplate right now. Feel free to share in the chat with us, whether you're live or later in replay. But do you notice any shifts in your energy around this time of the year? And how are you feeling right now? Are you feeling really tired? Like personally, I'm very drained, very tired. I'm in tons of pain. I have a pinched nerve in my shoulder that's been ongoing. And so my energy feels kind of zapped right now, um, which is typical of this time of year, right? But as we shift through this energy, hopefully we start to feel more of that upswing of energy, as we move through Imbolc and then into Imbolc season. So let us know, what kind of shifts are you feeling right now? Where's your energy at? And just pausing to say hi to those joining us. Merry meet to Nancy and to Renee and to Elizabeth made it. Merry meet. And then to Samantha, Andrea, Pamela, Merry meet, and Cersei. Merry meet, everybody. Rebecca is also here, and Susan. And Angie said, I'm trying really hard to rest in winter, right? And to enjoy the winter season and not push myself too hard. And that is very good advice for many of us to take, right? Myself included. This isn't a time that we need to push through it. Like what Angie says is rest and wintering. We are part of nature, right? Nature turns inward at this time. It's more about tending and less about doing. So if you are feeling low of energy, again, know that you are not alone. You're in good company here. And really listen to yourself and meet yourself where you are. And I personally feel that when we do that, if we don't try to push through or force energy, we actually will have a better time as we move through the rest of the cycle. You'll find that you have more energy once we get to spring, rather than if we like zapped it all right now and forced ourselves, and then we would come into springtime feeling still zapped, right? This is the time for renewal. And I think Loki's been wandering around behind me here. Um, So Rebecca said, Ohio, she's in Ohio. Winter has come. Yeah, definitely those big winter storms have been raging across parts of the U.S. And other parts of the world as well. Nancy says she's dragging it, and she feels it very densely. And yeah, like a dense energy around us. That's something that I feel very much right now as well. And then Cersei said, very much with me, very tired and in a lot of pain. Yeah. So I think, it's that I've been sort of forcing myself to push through that pain. And that is the exact opposite of the energy of Imbolc. Really, what I should be doing is doing more resting, saying no to more things, putting some things on the back burner and not forcing it, right? Kelly said she is also feeling drained. She said her pain has increased. She said, although I feel like I wintered better this year than I had in the past, she said, I'm also hopeful and very much looking forward to the seasonal shift. Yeah. And so I think, too, it becomes a practice that can take time to learn. So, like Kelly said, feeling like she wintered better this year, but better than she has in the past, but still feeling drained and acknowledging that, and that is normal and natural. So, okay, so you can keep it coming in the chat. Let us know how you're feeling right now. But let's start by talking about the origins of Imbolc. So where does it come from? And I saw Samantha had also asked about when is Brigid's Day, and I am going to talk about that right now in this section. So we will get to that for sure. So the Celtic roots. So Imbolc is a holiday that comes from Celtic roots. Now, there are a couple of possible meanings for where the name comes from, and I'm going to go through two of the most popular ones. So, one of the meanings behind Imbolc comes from a word oimelc, spelled Oimelc. And this word has connections to milk and lactation and ewes, sheep. So this word is first found, as far as we know, in 10th century texts, so going back pretty far. Now, there is another meaning of Imbolc, or another interpretation of Imbolc, or where the word originates from, which is probably the more common interpretation that people hear. This one is Imbolg, spelled with a G on the end, and it translates to in the belly. So, actually, has a similar origin to oimelc. It refers to the gestation of livestock, in particular with the ewes and cows. This would be a time of the year when our ancestors, those of us who have Celtic ancestors, our ancestors were tending to those flocks. The sheep were becoming pregnant, cows were becoming pregnant. This is what was going to carry and sustain people through as we come into spring, right? So there's this great agricultural significance to the lambing season, as well as the sign that winter is finally loosening its grip. But one of the things that I really love about the translation in the belly is, so I think I've talked about this a couple years ago, maybe in an Ask Aislin. And so I really think about the solar plexus, right? The solar plexus is the fire, is the chakra in your body that's connected to the element of fire, which Imbolc is also connected to the element of fire. And your solar plexus is in your belly. It is right above your navel by a couple of inches. And we say in yogic tradition that your solar plexus is your internal fire. And above all else, there are actually some traditions that say it's the most important of your energy centers. If you don't have good digestion, if you don't have that fire burning inside of you, it's going to zap you of energy. So that is why tending to it is so important. So one of the things that this connection that I then make to Celtic or originated Imbolc is this fire in the belly, right? So what does that mean? What do you crave? What do you yearn for? What do you hope for? What do you wish for? What keeps the fire in your belly alive? Even through the dark winter, even through the darkness around us right now, which is hard to be missing at this time. Even then, what keeps the fire in your belly going? And to me, that is what Imbolc is all about. So I really love that translation of the word in the belly. So I'll share in the chat if you'd like what keeps the fire in your belly going. Now, I think too that when it comes to Imbolc, this is really more about a seasonal awareness than it is about fixating on a calendar, a date on the calendar, right? So we talked about how traditionally Imbolc is celebrated the 1st to the 2nd of February. But the reality is that it opens up a doorway for seasonal energy. And probably by the time we get to Spring Equinox, hopefully in most places people will start to be feeling that shift of the energy by the time we get to Ostara, but right now we may not be seeing it as much. So it's really about becoming aware of the seasons. So if you are still in an area where winter is raging, you are still in winter. You really, I mean, we can move through into that Imbolc energy, but we are still kind of very much fixated in winter. So it's important for us to kind of read the land, notice what the land around us is doing, and see if we can reflect that in ourselves, right? And that is how we know that we are, like some have said, wintering properly, or using the energy properly, or kind of moving uh, naturally with the energy of the seasons, is when we follow that rather than just fixate on, oh, it's February 1st. I should be shifting my energy and changing. It's kind of like see what's going on outside of you and then have that mirror what goes on inside of you. Most places, eventually, as we move through in a couple of weeks, hopefully these winter storms will subside and there will be signs that winter is loosening its grip. I still, even if there's tons and tons of snow and storms and ice, still it is true that the days are becoming a little bit longer, and that becomes more and more evident. So that can be kind of an anchor that you, even if you are in those ice storms and the coldness and the darkness and everything, noticing that the light is a little bit longer every day helps to renew and instill hope within us and show us that there is a change happening in the wheel of the year. So it's really about noticing the first signs of life around us. So, so I'm just going back to the chat for a moment. Now, Jen said she feels more energetic, but she said it's probably because it's finally cool here. Yeah, because Florida had been really hot for a while, and now it's cooler, right? Um, the other thing I'm going to note, though, too, is that we are moving towards the full moon, so it's not actually uncommon to feel energetic. So some of you may be feeling drained, like I am, and others may be feeling more energetic, like Jen, because you're actually feeling, you may actually be also feeling the full moon energy that's rising and coming as well. Samantha says tired all the time. I may sleep through the last minutes of this. That's okay. That's okay. Andrea said very tired, low energy. And Pamela says, and not feeling guilty about resting, which is good, right? We don't want to feel guilty about it. And then Elizabeth says she swears she's the backwards witch. Winter brings makes me feel alive, and summer just drains me. And that can have to do with too, like the heat. So if you're in a place that's particularly hot and humid in the summer, that is natural too. So there's nothing that's backwards about it. As I've always said, even when it comes to like the lunar energies, typically people feel more energetic at the full moon and they feel more reflective around the dark moon, right? But not everybody feels that way. And so it's more important rather than just kind of fitting yourself into, you know, what we think we're supposed to feel. It's about really, really understanding yourself, taking stock of your own energy and understanding your own unique cycles, which are more important than just cycling with everybody else. Angie said, I prefer the slowness of winter, but I do love spring. She said I can't stand summer, but love fall. Um, yeah, I love all of the seasons in different ways. I personally love summer, but I'm somebody who's always like feeling cold, so that's why I love it. But I didn't love it as much when I lived in a place that was really humid. Um, okay, so Rebecca said the storm has excited me instead of the normal feeling of depression, so that's good. Always good when something helps to lift our moods, right? Very good. And Samantha said winter games at Imbolc and summer games at Lunaza. Right. And that is an important thing also for us to note is that across the wheel, so on one hand, those of our friends who are in the southern hemisphere, they are actually celebrating Lunaza right now, not Imbolc. Um, all of the Sabbats who have every Sabbat has another Sabbat across the wheel from it, which has similar energies, but also very vastly different energies. And so at Lunaza, one of the things that's very traditional is summer games. Some people think that's where the origin of the summer fair comes from. And so similar idea at winter, or at Imbolc, is the time for winter games and merriment and, when if we're locked inside and there's snow all around us, finding ways to pass time and have fun indoors, very much so. Okay, so I'll come back to the chat in a bit. Keep it coming. But let's talk a little bit about Brigid. And then Samantha had the question about when is Brid's Day or Brigid or Bridget. So many different pronunciations for her name. So Brigid or Brigid is the goddess that is often associated with Imbolc. Now, Imbolc is so associated with Brigid, Breed. I'll use all the names interchangeably. Sometimes when I say Breed, people don't know what I'm talking about. It's just the pronunciation I've always used. It was the one I was taught when I was a very young witch. Um, but so she is almost so synonymous with this holiday that in our tradition, in our midnight tradition, in our particular coven of Midnight's Flame, I can only think of one Imbolc in the last 15 years where we have not worked with Breed or with Brigid at this holiday. So I think there was one time we worked with Pele, because it is a fire holiday and we wanted to change things up. But we typically work with Breed because she seems so synonymous with the holiday. Now, she is a goddess of the fire. She's a goddess of poetry. She is a goddess of healing, smithcraft, creativity. So there's a lot of different directions a person can go with Imbolc energy. So like if you are somebody who's like very creative and maybe you've been feeling blocked, this is a good time to kind of stoke the fire of your creativity. If you're somebody who makes something or crafts something, very much connected to Breed or Brigid, evoking that fire energy within you, healing energies connected to the hearth and the home. We're going to talk about in a moment. She is the guardian of the hearth and the home. And so there's going to be very much a connection to home when it comes to Imbolc. And when we talk about the practices later, we're going to talk about how house blessing is a very common practice. House cleansings are very common practices at Imbolc. Now, Brigid, she was eventually transformed into Saint Bridget by the Catholics, presumably because she, like some goddesses, was difficult to sort of eradicate from the pagan people who the Catholic Church was trying to convert. And so they sort of brought the goddess and transformed her into this saint. Now, the saint is so revered, the goddess and the saint, who are pretty much they are the same thing. It just depends on which form of that energy the person is looking at. The goddess is so popular that in 2023, that was the first year that it was designated that the first Monday in February would be St. Bridget's Day in Ireland. It's a bank holiday, which means everything's closed, the government, the banks, everything, and it is a national holiday of Ireland. So I think that is really remarkable, especially for those of us who've been working with this beloved deity for decades, and then to see a country actually revere her so much as to make a national holiday surrounding her. So to answer Samantha's question, it would be the first Monday in February. So this year, 2026, that would make it the 2nd of February would be her holiday in Ireland. So if you are somebody who can take off work, it's a religious holiday. I've always said, if you are a pagan, if you're a witch, the Sabbats are your religious holidays. You may not celebrate Christmas or Easter or things like that. You may be celebrating these holidays of the wheel. And so if you are able to take a day off of work, consider taking off the second in observance of Imbolc and Brigid, and have a day to yourself if that's something that's possible for you. So there are also fire connections to Imbolc, and they also then further connect to Brigid as a goddess of the hearth and of the fire. So when we are talking about fire, the fire connections of Imbolc, we are talking about the hearth fires, which are the fires of your home. Light your fireplace right now if you have one, or a fire pit, candles, and also your inner flame, which we sometimes forget. And then that goes back to that, what I said in the beginning, that it is the what is burning in your belly, right? So it's not always just about the outside fire; it's about the inner fire as well. Now, fire has many connections: illumination, purification, inspiration. And so the hearth isn't just about our home. Well, so the hearth is, very much about our home. It is the center of the home. It's like the heart of the home, is what people say. In a modern home, we'd probably think of it as the stove. But a place where people, the hearth would be a place where our ancestors would gather and sit around and talk and share stories and eat together. And so it has come to symbolize, that sacredness of the center of your home. So it not only does it symbolize the sacredness of your home, though, but it also symbolizes the sacredness of your body. So your body is your physical home in this plane, right? So that is why I think, we talk about home cleansings, but we should also be acknowledging body cleansings. So what can we do to kind of purify ourselves, purify our physical bodies, purify our energetic bodies, maybe through purifying breath work or something like that, or resting, like many people have said. And then that further connects us to our inner world and that fire within us. So it is true, while it is true that working with Brigid or Brigid is a very common practice at Imbolc, remember, it's always optional. And so if you are somebody who doesn't work with deities, never feel like you are forced to work with them. You don't have to. But she is pretty much synonymous with this holiday. So let us move into the deeper meaning of Imbolc. So kind of talking on the surface, what does Imbolc represent? What does it symbolize? Its connections to the home and to Ireland and to the goddess Brigid and fire. But what does it mean for us in a deeper sense? So Imbolc is a liminal space. I mean, the reality is that all Sabbats are liminal spaces. What a liminal space means is it's just a transition point. So we have many liminal spaces. We have the space between day and night, and so in night and day. And so this is why these are very sacred times. When we say the veil's thin ever so slightly, it may find it easier to connect to spirits and things outside of this plane during those liminal spaces, like day, like dusk and like dawn. And we also have that liminal space that occurs at the end of one lunar cycle into the beginning of the next. We call this the dark moon, right? And the dark moon, we know that the veil's thin ever so slightly at that time because, it's a liminal space. It's a transition space. Other liminal spaces, like physically, are like the crossroads. This is why people who work with Hecate will go to the crossroads. Even those who don't work with Hecate can sense the sacredness of the liminal space of the crossroads. It's a good place to go to let things get to purge yourself of things or release things. So there is always a liminal space from one Sabbat to the next one, and so in this case, this is the liminal space between winter and spring. We're not fully in winter anymore, but we're not in spring quite yet either. We're in that space in between. So this is the space between rest and action, and so this is why a lot of times, like I was saying earlier, if we're thinking about seeds, I think about seed planting physically at Ostara, but I think about seed planting mentally at Imbolc. So this is the time to kind of plant the seeds be in our restful state when we need to, planning, planting, kind of starting to get that energy moving that will then accelerate as we move further into the growing half of the year. This is a time of inner renewal if we know how to rest well and to tap into that energy. This is a time of clearing out what is stagnant in your life, or heavy, or the things that are no longer serving you. Perhaps they served you at one point and they no longer do. So this is a good time to let go. This is also a time for making space rather than for forcing your goals. So again, if you're feeling this pressure to force things, just kind of give yourself that grace here at this time. That is not really the energy of this time at the time of the season, unless you feel it is. So for those of you who are like really amped up, of course, never like hinder your energy because the outside, like because traditionally, we're saying that the energy is quieter here. But if you are living in that quieter energy, don't feel guilty. Don't force anything. This is more about internal planning than it is about forcing your goals. This is also about hope without pressure. So we retain that small flame of hope, right? And but we don't have the pressure of having to make big changes right now. We trust that something is growing, even if we can't fully see it with our eyes. We still know because we are witches and we are aware of the flow of the cycles of the seasons. We know that this energy is cyclical and it changes and it moves. And we will pass through this Imbolc, right? And we will eventually move into spring. But we will remember that there's always another Imbolc. And to me, that is the beauty of the witch's solar year and the witch's lunar year, is remembering that we'll always return back to this time again, but we will be different. We'll be changed. We'll be hopefully more highly evolved spiritually because we have put in the work and we're learning how to, flow with the cycles and the energies of the season. So, trust that something is growing, like I said, even if you don't know what that is quite yet. So I'm just going to go back to the chat for a bit, and then we are going to talk about some different things you can do to celebrate Imbolc. So some of these kind of traditionally based, and then some of them more modern practices. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas for some spells, as well as just some other things you can even do in your mundane life. So trying to find the chat here. So let's see here. So Andrea said, I do love winter. It gives me a chance to go more inward. When my energy is low, it can feel kind of like hibernation. Yeah. So again, thinking about what nature is doing outside of you. Angie said, I'm usually super restless at both the new and the full moon. Should I like to feel more energetic instead of restless? Yeah, and that can be tricky too, because you're not alone. That is something that people will commonly say. Like, so you're probably feeling the restlessness because you're in those transition spaces. So what I would do is I would probably, for somebody like that who's experiencing kind of that restless energy, is if you have never done this before, keep a lunar calendar and just make note of what phase of the moon it is, and then just write down a few words about how you're feeling mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Track that for a couple of months. Notice the patterns. It sounds like you're already kind of noticing the patterns. I'm restless at these two times. But it could be, ask yourself, what does my body really want the most right now? What does my mind really want the most? What does my spirit really want the most? And see if that is aligned to like what you're doing, because the restlessness could come from the fact that you're just slightly misaligned with what your energy is saying versus like what you're actually doing. So one of the things I've found is like, around the full moon, I will feel very not necessarily restless, might not be the word I would use, but like I don't sleep very much. I mean, I want to be able to rest and sleep, but my mind is very active. And I tend to get more kind of those downloads, lots of information coming through about, what I should do, the goals I should have, any struggles I might be having, how to fix or correct those. And so if I resist that and I'm just like, oh, I just want to sleep or I just want to rest, but all that information is coming through. I feel like that contributes to me feeling a little agitated. So I just sort of chalk it up to, I'm probably not going to sleep much around the full moon, and I'm gonna when that information comes through, I'm gonna really acknowledge it, write it down, and put real stock into it rather than resisting against it. So just kind of see if you can find any patterns for yourself. And Cersei said working with Pele would be awesome. Yeah, she's a goddess that, yeah, like I said, we worked with her once at Imbolc because of that fire energy connection. Um, it looks like Samantha's having trouble with the feed. That's too bad. I hope others are doing okay with the feed. Okay, so CB said, I recently winter sowed some seeds because some seeds need cold stratification as they won't sprout in the spring. I feel like this is very symbolic of the time of the year. Absolutely. That is the preparation, right? So we're not necessarily putting them into the soil and expecting them to grow right now. It's that slow growth, it's that quiet tending, which is very much aligned with Imbolc. And then again, that will shift as we move into spring. And then your seeds will be in the place where they can grow and bloom eventually. Um, Okay, so I'll come back to the chat in just a bit, but let us know too as I go through this next part. So here's some ideas for Imbolc. Let us know which of these resonate with you. If there's something that isn't on my list, which there will definitely be things that are not on my list, let us know too. Well, how are you celebrating Imbolc? How do you like to celebrate Imbolc? How have you celebrated in the past? So let's first start by kind of thinking about traditional observances. So we talked about how this was a time of light, right? Of fire and light and growth. And so one of the things that is very traditional at Imbolc is lighting candles to welcome in the returning sun. So this is a practice that we do at Yule as well, and it continues into Imbolc. And you will notice I make this, I like to make connections. You've probably noticed this about me. When it comes to our chakra system, one chakra is not just in isolation from the others. The chakras around that chakra are also influencing that chakra, and they have similarities to it. So there's there's differences between the root and the sacral chakra, but because they are next to each other, there are also similarities between them. And the same is true with the Sabbats. So there's parts of Yule and parts of Imbolc that overlap, and so this quiet returning of the light is a theme that we see in both of those Sabbats. Imbolc is associated with increasing daylight, as I mentioned earlier, and that sun's slow return. So one of the things that is really nice to do is just to light as many candles as you safely can, whether that is actual candles, or if you're in a place where you can't light actual candles, light as many LED candles as you can, and just really fill the room with light in order to symbolize the return of that growing light. So here is a nice little idea that I think is cool, is if you are able to light 5 candles, you can have each of those candles represent something in your life, and then you can spend some time reflecting on these 5 different things. So the first candle can represent what survived this winter. So what is it that kind of came with you through the winter into this moment? And that would be candle number 1. Candle number 2, what is beginning to stir? So just like that idea of Imbolc being that, that stirring of the light and the energies around us, that solar energy, what is beginning to stir for you? And that can represent candle number 2. And you can make these all the same color or different colors if you want. Candle number 3, what needs protection? So it's commonplace also at Imbolc to do protection spells. It was very common for our ancestors to do protective magic during the winter because it seemed to be a time when they felt like they needed it the most. So what needs protection in you is candle number 3. Candle number 4, what needs clarity? So again, that the sun beginning to come back and shining its light, illuminating what needs clarity in your life. Candle number 4. And then candle number 5, what are you ready to tend? So going along with that theme of tending the seeds of Imbolc, what are you ready to tend in your life? So maybe it is something that is not fully in bloom yet and maybe won't be fully in bloom for a while. But what are you ready to tend right now? So you can do this silently. So you can sit and light your candles around these different themes and sit silently in contemplation, or you can speak it out loud and activate your throat chakra if you want. No right or wrong here. And you can also practice this over several different nights. So you don't have to do it all for one night. You could do it every night, light those candles every night over the next 6 weeks once Imbolc season starts, and you could do that. Or you could light them over the course of 1 week or a couple of days. So there's not one right way to do this, and you can feel free to swap out the intentions of the 5 candles a little differently if you would like. But I thought that was a really pretty idea to share, and something that allows you to kind of get involved and really use that contemplative energy of Imbolc as well, and then also connect you to the element of fire. So household blessings. So I said earlier too that Imbolc is very much connected to the home and to the hearth, and so this is a good time to bless the house. So if you have not done a house blessing ever, this is a great time to do it now. If you're somebody who's did one a while ago, this would also be a good time to kind of redo it, re-bless the house every year. So it's traditional to bless the hearth and the home at Imbolc. One simple way that you can do this is you walk through the house, room to room. You can bring a candle with you. You could bring incense with you. You can bring a bowl of salt or water. Again, there's not going to be really a right or wrong way to this. I'll tell you how I have done it in the past. So what we have done, I remember when I bought the house, I had the coven come over and we all did this together. And each person had something different. So one person had a bowl of water, one person had a bowl of salt, one person had a stick of incense, somebody had a sage bundle, a bell, somebody had a broom. There was a lot of different things that we had, right? And so people went room to room. We went in so if you want to go like in a clockwise or counterclockwise direction, you can have the intention of sort of like casting out negative energy, and then you can come through in a clockwise direction and then bring in positive energy. I believe when we did that year, we just went in the clockwise direction. We just focused on blessing the home room to room with all these different things. Now you could do this you could get 4 different things, something to represent, earth, like a bowl of salt, or something to represent water, a bowl of water, something to represent fire, a candle works great, especially because it's Imbolc, and something to represent air, so stick of incense, sage bundle, feather, something like that. You can also bring the broom and do sweeping, but you could come through and then you could cleanse the space with all 4 of those elements if you would like. If you have pets, just be careful about throwing too much salt out. I would just do very, very minimal amounts out to the edges of the room if you're using that. But I think that's a really nice way to bless your home. It's a good time to kind of pause and do that. You can also bless your car. You can bless any of your property. You could do blessings for your pets, for your children, for yourself, for other people who live in your home. If you are doing the house blessing, kind of the way I said, going from room to room, when you get to every door and every window, you can just have a little mantra or affirmation that you say, or a little chant or something. So this is a nice one. May this space be protected, warmed, and prepared for the season ahead. And then, that helps us to welcome in that more positive energy into our space. So, have you ever done a house blessing before or a house cleansing before? And if so, let us know how you've done it. That's how I've always done it, but I always love hearing how other people do it as well. Now we can also leave offerings. So milk, bread, and butter are very traditional offerings of Imbolc. Now, milk represents nourishment, returning, and so kind of think of the origins of the word Imbolc. We believe either of the origins refers back to kind of lactating ewes, right? and milk. So that represents nourishment energy. Bread represents sustenance, and butter represents abundance. Now, if you are dairy free, you just get dairy free versions of all of this. You can absolutely do that. But what you can do is you can prepare the food, one or more of these, and eat it very intentionally. And then before consuming it, you could say some kind of a little blessing like, I receive what sustains me. And then afterwards, if you would like, you can offer some of that to the land or to your ancestors. So I think that's a very, very small little special practice. It packs a lot of energy into it. And then you can, again, remember too, you can stack and layer any of these practices. You could light your 5 candles with your intentions, and then you could do these offerings, consume some of it yourself, take in that sustenance and the good blessings and the nourishment, right? And then leave some of the offerings for the land or for your ancestors. So I also have some spell work that I wanted to give you as well, or at least talk about. So there are like these, there are traditional things that people do, like making breeds crosses and things like that. I'm not really going to talk about that today, though. A breed's cross is a very traditional item that a person could make at this time. If you don't know what a breed's cross is, or Brigid's cross, look it up. They're very easy to make. Traditionally, they're made out of straw or reeds, but we have made them out of pipe cleaners, and it's also an easy and fun craft to use with kids. I will try to find a link to making them, and I will put it in the chat here later. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll put it in I'll put it underneath in the comments too. But let's talk about a couple of spells that I think would be really useful at Imbolc. So the first is an Imbolc renewal spell. So this is very good for those of you who are feeling low energy, but and don't really have a lot of ability to put a lot of effort into the spell, but you're looking for something that has a high effect. So this is a very low effort spell with a high effect. So the purpose here is to just clear out stagnant energy. So there's a reason that people do like purifications and cleansings at Imbolc. So if you kind of think about it from an evolutionary standpoint and what like would help people survive, it's like if your house is really dirty and not cleaned and cleared of things like that could cause problems or diseases, then you would have been more likely to catch something in the winter and then potentially to not survive it. So we can understand where this idea of purification and cleansing and cleanings comes from at Imbolc. So the idea here is that we are clearing out stuck and stagnant energy. So it's not just about clearing out, like cleaning the physical space. It's also about cleaning the energetic space within us. So the purpose of this spell is to clear out those stagnant energies without forcing change, which again is aligned with kind of the energy of Imbolc. So here you will need a white or a yellow candle. Either one works fine. A small bowl of water and a paper and pen or something to write with. So you're going to write down one thing that you would like to release, and that could be a habit, a mindset, a pattern. If you have more than one thing, you can write down more than one thing. I would just recommend not trying to have so many things that it becomes overwhelming. Just what is the thing that you most need to let go of right now? What would help you the most if you could let go of it? So you will kind of write that down on your paper, and then you can dip your fingers into the water. You can feel free to kind of anoint yourself. I like to anoint my third eye or anoint my throat, since this is this is a chakra of creation. So dipping your fingers into the water, anoint yourself, and then you can anoint the paper as well. And as you do so, say, as winter loosens its hold, I release what no longer supports me. As winter releases or loosens its hold, I release what no longer supports me. And then you can feel free to do whatever you want with the paper. You can rip it up. You could, at this point, you've put water on it, so it's not really going to burn. Alternatively, if you don't want to use the bowl of water, you could just burn that paper now at that time. But you discard this paper in some way because you're releasing it. You don't need it any longer. And then you can light your candle And you can sit and reflect on it for a few minutes on this thing that you're letting go of. Maybe see yourself kind of untethering it from you. Maybe seeing yourself in the future once it's been released. What do you look like? Um, how are things in your life once it's released, and kind of see that, envision that in your mind, and then you can end the spell. I mean, you could sit and reflect as long as you'd like, and then go ahead and end the spell. Now, as far as the candle goes, this goes for any candles. You can let it burn all the way down as part of the spell. You can put it out and relight it over the course of several days if you would like. Totally up to you. Now there's another version where we're actually will burn the paper. And so this is the fire and the ash release spell. So rather than, I kind of think of the one I just gave you as being a little more gentle. We're using water, we're anointing it. Water tends to be slower moving as far as transformative energy than fire is. Fire tends to be much faster and quicker. So in this spell, the fire and ash release spell, we use the element of fire. Fire purifies, and then the ash returns this to the earth. So here you'll write down, again, write down something that is complete, something that is ending, something you're ready to let go of, something that is draining you, right? Anything you're willing and ready to let go of. You will then burn that paper. So you would need a candle for this one as well. So you burn the paper. When that is done, so what I like to do is I like to burn the paper in my little cast iron cauldron. You could also burn it in a fire safe bowl or something like that. So then afterwards, collect the ashes, take them outdoors, or put them in a plant, like a pot, like a pot with soil. And then you can say, what has served its purpose now returns to the earth. What has served its purpose now returns to the earth. And then you can put those ashes down into the earth and just trust that the earth will recycle that energy, and then kind of realign you with the energy that you actually need now that you've let go of something that isn't serving you. So two nice little ways to do some releasing here. Now let's talk a few mundane activities as well before we, actually some mundane activities that have a magical slant to them. Honestly, to me, the separation between mundane and magical for a witch is a very fine line that sometimes doesn't even exist, right? But here are some other things that we can do for Imbolc. So tool and supply check. So you can also do consecrations as well. And I will talk about, what that would mean. So for a tool and supply check, so historically, people would prepare tools and supplies at this time of the wheel before the coming agricultural season. So they would get like all of the tools for agriculture ready, because remember we talked about this being a time of preparation. Prepare when you have the time before you need the things, right? So we as modern witches, we can also prepare our tools. So we can gather our candles, we can gather our ritual tools, we can consecrate our ritual tools. So consecration is where we set something aside as being sacred. And so if you have a new tool, this would be a great time to do a consecration of it and set in and basically say, this tool will be used for my magical purposes. It is sacred to me. It's blessed by, you could bless it with the 4 elements if you would like. You could do that with new tools, but you can also do that with tools that you've had for a while. It's always fine to reconsecrate them, right? Reconsecrate your athame or your wand, or your cauldron or your chalice or any of the tools that you use. You can get a new journal and kind of begin a new journal today or during Imbolc, and kind of consecrate that as, okay, this is going to be for the workings that I'm going to do over the course of the next couple of months. You can also bless your herbs, or any other household supplies that you use in your magical and / mundane lives, which are kind of interchangeable at times for a witch. Also a good time to replace what it needs to be replaced. So if you go through your kind of magical cabinet and look for what you've used up over the year, what do you need? Do you need some more candles? Do you need some more charcoal discs? Do you need a new lighter to light your candles? Some new incense? So restock your cabinet. And I think that this is just a good time. It's preparatory magic. It gets you ready during this time to be prepared for when you actually need those things. Now, another thing that we can do is we can clean with purpose. So we talked about this being a time of cleansing and purification. So we don't need to go wild and do all kinds of cleaning, but we can clean intentionally. So what part of your house needs to be cleaned and clear? And the other thing I think can be a fun thing to do too is to pick a part of your house that you use a lot. So like for example, me, I work from home and I'm always working at my desk. And over time, my desk gets cluttered with stuff that really doesn't need to be on it, right? So this is a good time to take those spaces where you're working and say, okay, I'm going to clear this space and I'm going to really ask myself what needs to stay in this space versus what doesn't really need to be here anymore, and move those things. What are we finished using? Like my desk always has like stones and stuff all over the place, but I'm not using all of them at every time. So if I'm no longer using that stone, I can move it to a different place and clear out that area. So I think that's a really nice thing to do at this time. And then as you're doing it, you can also be asking yourself, what am I making room for as I start to clear this area? Now, another thing we can do, kind of more on the mundane side, but is planning and preparing for the next season. So, our ancient ancestors, they used this as a time to get ready for the spring that was coming, because when spring came, that's when the real work is going to begin, right? Of planting and tending to the animals, and especially with the origins of where Imbolc comes from, it was very much an agricultural society. So a lot of work was going to need to happen very soon. So this is the time when they would be getting ready. So in a more modern version of that, we can kind of review our calendar. What is coming up? What would I like to be coming up? Projects that I would like to implement when I have more energy as the springtime comes. Understanding what is my energy capacity right now versus what might it be in a little bit of time. And so really tapping in and kind of understanding the flow of my energy. So you can ask yourself what realistically what should begin soon, what realistically should begin soon, and what needs more time. And then being okay with that, being okay when those answers come to us. And this very much aligns with that kind of early stage, kind of gestational energy of Imbolc. Now, we can also do divination at this time. We can do divination at any Sabbat. Imbolc isn't usually the one that people think of when they think of divination. We think more of like Samhain, but it's a good time to do divination as well. So you can do a one card pull. Pull one card and ask what is quietly growing, kind of what's under the surface, maybe something that I have not seen yet or I'm not quite aware of yet. Or you could do a more like a 3-card spread, what is thawing on one hand, what needs tending for the second card, and then what will bloom later. So we have one card for thawing, one card for tending, and one card for blooming in the future. And again, you could use cards here, you can use runes here, you can use your pendulum. Pendulum might be a little harder unless you have a pendulum board that can spell things out, but you can also ask yes and no questions at this time. And then I always think that journaling is always worthwhile at any Sabbat, especially at a Sabbat like Imbolc, where it's a turning inward kind of Sabbat. So here are a couple of prompts that you could use. And again, you can journal, you can write these down. You could just sit in contemplation, get yourself in a meditative state and sit in contemplation. You can even pull cards to answer these questions or do automatic writing. It never has to be just a journaling kind of experience. So here's a good prompt. What part of my life feels like it's just beginning to warm? So, that's first stirring of the heat and the light. What do I need to care for more consistently, or what do I need to tend to more consistently? And what am I no longer willing to carry forward? So those could be 3 really nice prompts for this time of year. But again, the energy is aligned with any kind of reflection at this time. So any prompts that feel like they're the ones that are kind of calling for your attention. Those are great ones to use at this time. So I wanted to end here, and then I'll go back to the chat for a few minutes. But I wanted to end here by just talking about like two things kind of energetically that make this Imbolc different. So what does Imbolc mean, knowing that it's going to take place on the full moon? So this energy, the energy of the full moon is the peak of the lunar cycle. It's the most activating part of the lunar cycle when the energy is at its full potential. As opposed to Imbolc, right, where that energy is more in a tending state, it's not at its full capacity. So these two energies are slightly in contradiction to one another or conflict with one another, though they easily can be used together. So sometimes when we have an Imbolc where we're at the new moon or we're in the first quarter, that energy is more aligned to that kind of soft energy of Imbolc as opposed to this full moon energy that we're going to be feeling now. So, like I said earlier, for anybody who is feeling more energetic, it could be that upswing of energy coming from the full moon. So, how may that translate into your Imbolc this year? You may be feeling more fired up. You may be feeling more energetic. You may feel the amplification of that fire energy in you in a way that maybe you haven't in Imbolc's past. So just kind of be aware of that. If you notice that, that is probably the explanation for it, is the fact that Imbolc is falling on a full moon this year. And then, of course, again, it's also important for us always to remember that Imbolc is a season and not a singular day. It's not a single act play. It's one that takes place over 6 weeks. So the energy will unfold over these weeks, which means that you can return to these practices multiple times. You don't have to do everything all at once. You can do a little bit now, a little bit later. You can do something now, and you can return to that same practice in a couple weeks. So maybe you decide to do like one of the candle lighting practices or the releasing practices I mentioned earlier, and then maybe you want to return to that in a couple weeks and do it again. Subtle work, we can do it multiple times. And sometimes this subtle work, when it's repeated, actually will compound itself and strengthen itself, and you will see more of an effect from that kind of magic. So, so that is what I have for you today. I hope that you enjoyed learning more about Imbolc. I know that it's not everything there is to say about Imbolc, but share in the chat, how are you celebrating Imbolc this year? And any of these ideas that I mentioned today, are there any here that you would like to try? So share in the chat with us. So I'm going to go to the chat. Also, now we have our, our Q&A. So if you have any questions about anything related to witchcraft, shadow work, or energy, drop that energy work. Drop that in the chat, and let's see if there's any questions for us. So while I'm waiting for questions, I'm going to tell you about something that is coming up. So on Sunday, 2/1. We are going to be hosting an online Imbolc ritual. So this is our ritual, Elemental Vows, Imbolc ritual for renewal and realignment. So this is our traditional Imbolc ritual that we do every year. I think that the ritual gets a little colored differently every single year that we do it, based on kind of what's going on for people out in the world. So the ritual is not the same every year, but what this ritual does is it allows you to kind of connect to the elements. We'll do some energetic kind of balancing with our elements. So see if we can reflect on where the elements are showing up in our lives. And then we're going to all together, we'll help everybody create a set of elemental vows. So these are different kind of promises that you make to yourself that will further your pathway in different ways. And then you can use these vows to guide your growth as you move through Imbolc season and then into the rest of the wheel of the year. So this is a very beloved ritual of ours. It tends to be one of our more popular rituals. We love it very much. We would invite you, we invite you to join us. So if you are in our Shadow Seekers membership, or if you are initiate or a member of Coven of Midnight's Flame, your invitation is you get an invitation through those groups. So just look for it in your email, look for your Zoom link. But if you are not in either of those groups, we would love for you to join us. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in the chat a link where you can learn more about this ritual and sign up. You can sign up by donation. Any amount will get you a ticket, and then your donations really help us immensely to be able to continue to put on and host events like this. So check that out. We're also going to be working with the goddess Brigid, and it's just a great ritual. Now, if you are local to the Los Angeles area, the night before, we will be doing this ritual in person at the Crooked Path store in Burbank. So if you are live, or if you are local, you can find Crooked Path, the Crooked Path on well, let's see if I can even find. I'll drop it in the chat later. For those who are local, I will drop that in the chat for you as well, so you can grab a ticket to that if you'd want to come and celebrate with us in person as well. So that is what is coming up. As far as next week's Ask Aislin, I have to sit down and plan out the next couple of months of the shows, and so I do not know what next week's episode is yet, but I will know soon enough, and you will know soon enough when I put the invite up. But let me go back to the chat and see if there are any questions for me or anything that perhaps I missed. So, so let's see here. So Elizabeth said, my granny girl, Mila, and me are lighting candles and making homemade cheesecake for Imbolc. Awesome. Could write that connection to dairy, too, at Imbolc. So cheesecake is a perfect thing to be making for Imbolc. There's also a traditional food called coal cannon that I have made in the past. It's been some years since I made it, but it's people call it it's the Irish mashed potatoes. And it's basically potatoes, usually with like leeks. Sometimes it has like heavy cream and butter in it, but you can absolutely make like a non-dairy version if you want. Very delicious dish for Imbolc as well. But yeah, food is a great, and cooking together and lighting candles, great way to celebrate Imbolc. And Elizabeth said she is doing the 5 candle ritual. She said she loves that. Awesome. Angie said, if we put a little of those offerings to our ancestors on our altars, how long do we leave them? Yeah, excellent question. So this is up to you, really. The thing is that once you leave the offering, so like if you are leaving food offerings, so I think you're referring to the butter and the bread and the milk. So if you're leaving food offerings, they are consumed on the etheric plane by the deities in that moment. And so even though we do not see it here in the physical plane, the food has been consumed energetically. And so you can leave them like as long as you feel comfortable, and then you can discard them. So usually what I will do is I'll leave them out for a few hours to overnight. If you're leaving out milk, I don't know if you want to leave it out, how long you want to leave it out. You kind of decide that, and then you can safely discard it. Usually what I do is I just put it outside. I leave it in my yard, especially like something like bread for animals, as long as it's something that is safe for animals to eat. But other people, they don't, they put it in the garbage. I mean, once it's been consumed on the etheric plane, you discard of it any way you want. I just like to leave it outside for the nature spirits. Debbie said, fear of the unknown, frustration at others and self. So feeling kind of some negative emotions right now, which is very common at this time of the year. You are definitely not alone. Oh, right. Any other, there's a lot in the chat, so I'm just making sure there's no questions that I missed. So Cersei asked about the prompts. Let me know which ones, if they were the journaling ones, which ones they were, and then I can definitely read those again. Okay, so I will put the prompts in the chat, like all the things I kind of read. I'll put those journaling prompts in the chat because I assume that's what you meant. But I'm going to close up now because we've been going a while. As always, it is awesome to spend Tuesday night with you. If you are not on our mailing list, I'm going to go ahead and drop this in the chat. So this is a link where you can sign up for our mailing list. And you will get a weekly email, which always has a link to the replays of these videos, as well as little spells and tips and downloads and witchy things for you for the week. And then you also will always get notified when there are events or rituals coming up. So definitely join the mailing list if you're not already on it. You'll also get sent a copy of the Witch's Guide to Shadow Work as well when you sign up. We also have a YouTube channel, Body Mind Witchcraft. We are trying to get to monetize it this year, so we need some video view hours before we can get there. So if you are not a subscriber, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Body Mind Witchcraft, and watch some of our old videos, and that will help us get closer to our goal. And of course, join us for Imbolc, our ritual. We would love to have you there. Leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the video. That helps us get this out to the feed of more people. And until next time, blessed be.